itself is not. It's just a temporary vehicle that doesn't even exist in reality. If you want to question that, go and sit in the meditation for long enough, and eventually you'll realize. And I was also thinking earlier, this teaching, for those of you who've had experiences where you're absolutely convinced the body doesn't exist, will land very easily. If you haven't had that experience yet, your intelligence will say, what are you talking about? Your spirit might be smiling and saying, you're on track. It's it's ultimately up to you to figure this out. So again, the body is fundamentally a projection of the mind. It is a mask, it is a costume, it is an illusion, it's temporary, and it was created by the ego as a place to hide, as a place to reinforce your separateness from each other, something to defend, something to attack, something to make yourself better, worse. It's just a distraction. It's also quite a limitation. It limits us in terms of communication. Language is a limitation. The body is a limitation. It limits awareness. It localizes our consciousness into what feels like one being. Consciousness is not awareness. Awareness can never be localized. That's total. Consciousness can be localized into a body. And it creates the illusion of private minds. I love this one. It means that you can think that your mind, your thoughts are private, that they cannot be shared with others, that your beliefs, that your suffering, that your ideologies are all yours uniquely, but the mind is all one. It's actually all connected, which is why it is very possible for somebody else to read your mind, because they're reading their own mind. It's an illusion, privacy, because we're one. So you see, there's so many misperceptions. There's so many psychological traps here. We may need more classes to go deeply into the body, but we'll see how far we get here. In saying all of this, in saying that the body is not sacred and that God didn't create the body because God only creates what is eternal, again, it doesn't advocate for hating the body. There's no teaching in Course in Miracles or pure non-duality that says you should hate the body, you should suppress the body, you should try and transcend it. That is a disaster, in the same way that we shouldn't repress or push away negative emotions. It's saying that the body is not what you think it is. That's it. The body is not what you think it is. This is a teaching about misidentification and trying to wake up and remember who you really are. If we hate, punish, even restrict the body, we are using the illusion to make the illusion more real, and we don't want to do that. In fact, you are meant to just keep living your life the way you're living your life. Enjoy the dream. Let it do what it's going to do. Sometimes it's going to be good, sometimes it's going to be bad. We don't want to push or pull on that at all. The goal is to wake up and remember who we are. If you're obsessed with the body, either for negative reasons or positive reasons, it's still obsession. Right? It's still obsession, and we don't want to obsess over the illusion. The ego structure, and again, just to define ego structure, it's a belief in separation. It's just a thought system, not a real thing, just a thought system. The ego uses anything it can to convince itself of separation. And so some of the ways the ego uses the body to convince itself of separation is through attack, attacking others, defending itself, defending its body, pleasure, pride, comparison. Body's great for comparing yourself in all sorts of ways. Women compare themselves against men. Certain people think they're more stupid and compare themselves intellectually against others. We definitely compare size, color, beauty, shape all the time to try and prove that we are better or worse. All just prove separation. Specialness. Some of us think we're more special because of our bodies. We think we're more special because, I don't know, we're fitter than other bodies, or we're more beautiful than other bodies, or we're younger than other bodies, or whatever it is. Well, it's all just a trick of the mind. What is really wonderful to know through all of this is that the Holy Spirit can reinterpret the ego's creation in order to help you wake up at any time. And that is true for anything that the ego creates. So when you start to tap into the innate voice of truth within you, it can get a hold of whatever the ego has created and says, can get a hold of whatever the ego has created, and it can use that to help you wake up out of the delusion. And so if the Holy Spirit comes through, it can reinterpret the body as a temporary communication device for forgiveness and healing. Let's do that one again. The Holy Spirit will reinterpret the body as a temporary communication device for forgiveness and healing. And it can begin to work with the illusion in order to unravel the illusion. That's called magic. And we do it all the time. So we begin to work with all of the sensations and emotions and thoughts that arise, and we can trace them, and we can go all the way back to the core, call on the Holy Spirit, and we can use this illusion to ultimately wake up out of it. The body has no inherent meaning other than the meaning we give it. We talked about that when we talked about projection. The purpose that you assign the body matters hugely. If a belief system rooted in fear and confusion gets a hold of the body, it will use it to prove your separation and your specialness, your vulnerability. If love gets a hold of the body, it will use it as a communication device to help you and others heal and wake up. And that's really what we're attempting to do, to make a transition in the mind from fear to love, to work with love, to work with the illusion, to wake up out of it. And so we could define the body through the perspective of pure non-duality, as the body is a temporary projection within the dream of separation made by the ego to sustain identification with limitation and individuality, but capable of being repurposed by the teacher of knowledge as a communication device for forgiveness and healing until awakening from the dream is complete. Another thing that's very helpful to understand here is that we are not attempting to reconcile the belief system of the ego with the truth. Some people are trying to do this thing where they integrate two sides of the coin. They're trying to integrate black with white. They're trying to integrate pain with pleasure and somehow see that it's all one thing. Another way of saying that is they're trying to make everything God. But that theory falls short very quickly, because that would state that suffering exists in love. That would mean that death is real in eternity. That would have to mean that everything that makes you separate has to exist in what is not separate. And so that's not what we're attempting to do here. We're not attempting to try and make the body real inside of the truth. We're attempting to dismantle all the belief systems that lead to separation so that we remember that only love is real and this is who we are. Getting deeper into this conversation, I'm going to answer a number of questions today that I think are really personally interesting and questions that will come up all the time. And the first big question beyond what is the body and how did it get here is, does waking up generate a healthy body? Does awakening guarantee health? And the answer to that question is no. It does not. Waking up also doesn't guarantee immortality of this body. It doesn't guarantee protection from violence in the dream. It doesn't guarantee financial riches. And it certainly does not guarantee a perfect dream life. That is something that is incredibly important to understand. And we're going to go into this a little bit because I know it's a huge misunderstanding. Not only when we look at other people, because sometimes we see other people and we say, oh, well, they clearly aren't awakened because they don't have the money, they're sick, they don't have the perfect life, they just got attacked. Or we look at ourselves and say, oh, we mustn't be free because we aren't perfect, we aren't healthy, we aren't going to live forever in the dream. But that is not how this works. The expectation that enlightenment should prove or provide or produce bodily perfection is itself a form of delusion. And it's a very unhealthy one. It's a very unhealthy one because it means you're going to start chasing perfect outcomes in the external world to prove your enlightenment. That is a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea because it's never going to happen. Because the external world is based on laws, right? The laws of fear always lead to decay, right? Birth, death, decay. It just is always going to happen in the dream. So you can't look at that and say, I am only awake when the dream is perfect, because there's no such thing. As it is perfect. It is what it is. The laws of it are functioning perfectly. Birth, death, decay, all of those things, hatred, violence, pleasure, pain, it all is part of the dream. And we're not attempting to make that better so that we can feel free. Liberation has nothing to do with forcing an outcome in the illusory world. After enlightenment, you might say, how on earth do you know this? I just know it. After your enlightenment, the body that you have been playing with may continue to follow a script. And that doesn't matter, right? There may be just an unfolding script. This is a drama. This is a show. And it has particular scenes, and they may just play out the way they're going to play out. It may just be part of your script that you're going to die in the next 10 years. It may be part of your script that you will live to an old age. It may be part of a script that cancer will happen. It may be part of your script that you're going to break your leg. We don't know. That's not the point. Because there's so much happening at a higher level. The point of awakening is to completely de-identify with that as who you are. It's to remember yourself as love and to move through the rest of the dream in peace and liberation. The physical indicators of your life or the world are not a good indication of your level of awakening. It's just not a good indication. And it's not a good indication of the level of awakening of somebody else. To look at their external life and say, oh, well, they mustn't be enlightened because of what you see is not a good indication. What matters is whether fear, guilt, attachment, judgment, or identification with this world remain. In fact, if somebody meets extremely challenging circumstances, whether that be, it can be in any area of life. It can be financially, it can be in your business, it can be health, it can be relationship, it can be execution. If you meet that with grace and your mind stays calm and there is peace and there is love and you still have connection to the Holy Spirit through that, that is an indication of an awakened mind. That is an indication of an awakened mind. Some people might look at Jesus' final few days here and say, well, he mustn't have been enlightened because he got crucified. Wouldn't an awakened mind be able to manifest a different outcome for himself? But that wasn't the point. The point was that the body of Yeshua could go through that situation. And he was showing that even in that situation, he could love. He was still free. He was still at peace. That is the indication of awakening. We're not here to try and manipulate the external world forever. For those of us who've tried that, it is exhausting and it will always break down because the laws of the material world are what goes up must come down. It just is how it is. Our liberation doesn't come from mastering the laws of the game. It comes from realizing the game isn't who we are. It's from being free from it. It's not boring. It's not pushing. It's not making everything redundant. It is waking our minds up to our limitless potential, our limitless knowing of self, our creativity. It has nothing to do with the script of this world. It's like, okay, if you're going to think about it like this, imagine that a whole group of people are sitting in a cinema and watching the movie of Planet Earth, and all of us are there and we're watching ourselves. The people sitting in the chairs, panicking and devastated and angry at how everything's unfolding, are the ones who are over-identified with the whole thing. But those who are sitting there laughing, thinking it's quite ridiculous, loving, realizing they're watching a movie and that the characters that they're looking at are not who they are the ones who are free. You know, it's just a metaphor, but it points in the right direction. An awakened mind is not proven by, let me say this again, glowing health. Doesn't always happen. It is not proven by psychic powers. That does not prove awakening. There are people with psychic powers who are nowhere near their awakened mind. You can become psychic without being awakened. I don't know if you've met any psychics out there. I know many. They're not awakened. It doesn't mean bodily invulnerability. The body will still get sick. It's still going to die. It doesn't mean wealth. It doesn't mean ideal circumstances. And it doesn't mean escaping death, as I just said. Now, eternally it does. As spirit it does. But it doesn't translate into the dream because they're different laws. They're different laws. You are eternal, but the body is not. One of them is the truth. You can't have both. You cannot be eternal and be a body that dies. You see, that is a contradiction. That is a contradiction, and we can't hold contradictions and be at peace, not at the deepest subconscious level. Truth is clear, not contradictory. A perfectly healthy body. Oh yeah, this is also very interesting. A perfectly healthy body, an extremely beautiful body, a very capable body is sometimes a greater distraction. Because we can become so obsessed with it. We can become so over-identified with our bodies if they seem to be perfect. Sometimes those people who have health conditions or who didn't come in so beautiful based on the current standards of whatever the collective's idea of beauty are, actually are given an opportunity to heal faster because they feel the illusion. And they have a reason to resolve that situation because it's uncomfortable. There are so many ideas that trap us. And if we just are a little bit on the fringe of those ideas, if we just don't quite fit into the box, sometimes we're more likely to wake up out of the illusion because we're not being trapped by the collective idea. We're not being trapped by the idea of beauty and obsessing over it as if the way the body looks somehow communicates our value and our worth, right? So we don't always want perfect outcomes in the dream world. It can get us really trapped, get us really hooked into this delusion. So I want you to think about this for a second. It is possible that you chose the life that you are having now because it's not quite perfect. And that actually will help you. Because there's no such thing as perfect at the end of the day. Don't strive for perfection. Strive for peace and freedom. And find perfection in that. These teachings are not interested in making the illusion eternal. Hear that. The Holy Spirit, love, has no desire to make the illusion eternal and perfect. It already knows what's eternal and perfect. The only desire it has is to help you remember that. So that's not what we're doing here. Now, if you choose love over fear, and this is really the definition of a miracle. The definition of a miracle is that you actually can get right down to the cause of your human experience. And you can see that there is fear and there is love, and you can choose love instead. That's the miracle. If you choose love instead, the outcome of that is immediate. You're already free. If you do that, it is possible that it may reflect in healing. It may reflect in a disease clearing itself up. It may reflect in circumstances in your life changing, but don't make that the indicator of your healing. It may or it may not. It doesn't matter. That's the thing. Your peace is what matters. The secondary effect of your enlightenment is not the proof of your enlightenment. It doesn't matter. Okay? The secondary effect of your enlightenment doesn't matter because it's in the choice itself. It's in the recognition of self. The story's going to play out the way it's going to play out. The miracle is not that you make a lot of money. It's not that the cancer goes away. It's not that you all of a sudden get the relationship you want. The miracle is that you're free. The miracle is that the guilt is gone. The miracle is that there is no more suffering. And it's interesting because the body can still have its experience. It can still go through its migraines, and it can still go through its relationship breakdowns and loss of money, and you can still be without suffering. That's absolutely possible. An awakened being may appear healthy or sick. An awakened being may die peacefully or violently. An awakened being may look ordinary or extraordinary. It doesn't mean anything, okay? It's all about your state of mind. The other thing I'm really excited, there's two more things I'm excited to talk about today in terms of body. And the next one is about sex and pleasure and orgasm. Because we talk a lot about suffering, but what about pleasure? And I think that when we suffer, yes, we can become addicted to it psychologically, subconsciously, and we can use that as an identity. And the ego has a lot of fun with that, but it also happens on the opposite side of the spectrum. We can get overly attached and addicted to the pleasures of life, the temporary pleasures of life. And so what about sex? What about pleasure and orgasm? Well, orgasm is probably one of the clearest examples of the ego's attempt to resolve through the body, not resolve. It's one of the clearest attempts of the ego to recover through the body the experience and the memory of wholeness. A lot of people talk about this. There is something in that moment of connection, sexual union, in which the longing for wholeness and completeness is satiated for just a moment. And it makes sense because we all really truly want that. A mind that is fundamentally built on a belief system of separation believes in lack, it believes in disconnection, it feels incomplete, it experiences loneliness, it experiences deprivation and loss of union, right? Actually, every worldly desire at its absolute core could be summed up as a distorted search for the lost wholeness of heaven in the mind. So everything we're seeking in this external world through the body is a distorted search to regain that. Money, partnership, health, pleasure. We're trying to get back to heaven. I said this a couple of classes ago. One of my favorite statements of the entire teaching is that the ego structure cannot only believe in illusion. That's way too painful. It lets some truth in. And so the ego still lets a little bit of truth through. It's still seeking it. It still wants pleasure. It doesn't want to live forever in suffering. It's just that the way we go about it when we still believe in separation is to try and get it from the outside. We try and look for it to complete us. We grasp for money. We grasp for riches. We grasp for people. We grasp for union. We grasp for pleasure to try and get back to that feeling, that knowing of heaven. Every worldly desire at its core is a distorted search for the lost wholeness of heaven that the truth of us remembers always and is calling us back to. And that goes for romance, special relationships, sex, beauty, intoxication, psychedelic experiences, transcendental states, ecstatic experiences, and orgasm. Any of these things that we reach for and that we want. And again, I'm not immune to this. I've gone through this myself, where you want to have these things. And in those moments that you're experiencing, they're beautiful, just for a second, right? They're just for a second. You can have these moments where you're like, this is everything. In the moment that people reach peak orgasmic states, and this can be through sex, but it can also be through psychedelics or breath work. There's many ways that we can get there. What's psychologically happening for just a moment is there's a brief suspension of the belief in separation. Just a brief suspension. The moment the mind goes quiet and you have access for a second to glimpsing what you remember heaven to be. The challenge with this is that if you haven't resolved the belief in separation 2 seconds later, 2 minutes later, 5 minutes later, you're just back in the delusion. And this is what it means to chase peak experiences. We don't need to chase peak experiences. If you want to have a peak experience for a longer period of time, resolve the belief in separation. And that's really where we're heading. Like, that's it. This isn't to disconnect from the human experience and suppress it and say, oh, I shouldn't feel anything. It's like, no. If you're chasing peak experiences and want orgasmic pleasure and joy and happiness, don't chase them. Resolve the belief in separation. And you will remember that's your natural state. It even says in all deep metaphysical texts that anything that is temporary is only symbolic of heaven and isn't actually close to the real thing. You got to hear that again. Even peak states, ecstatic bliss, orgasm, psychedelics, if they are temporary, they are only symbolic of what heaven is. It's not the real thing. And so if you think that's awesome, well then, just think about what's coming when you dissolve the belief in separation. Because it's beyond a temporary experience. Permanent union is enlightenment, not temporary glimpses of a symbolic idea of peace. I know it seems a little harsh, but it actually goes on to say that this is true for romance, mystical states, psychedelic states, sexual ecstasy, and even artistic rapture. If it is not permanent, it is symbolic. And if you want to go deeper into having those experiences, we have to resolve the belief in separation. I tried to say this to Tali a little while ago, just because I was thinking it through for myself. I was thinking, wow, many people must think that I hate the human experience and I'm trying to get rid of it in order to get out of it. And I was like, no, that's not my motivation at all. My motivation is that I have touched peak experiences. And I've had absolutely undefinable experiences of love. And if that is just a symbolic temporary experience, and the way to have that always is to resolve the saga of separation, I'm all in, right? This isn't about getting out of pain or trying to manifest a better illusion. It's about being in heaven. So we could say in terms of orgasm, that orgasm is a bodily symbol attempting to imitate the total union the mind actively longs for in God always. So we want that. We're always going to long for that. We want to be in love. Always. Always. And we're seeking it always. And yes, there are little glimpses that we can get of it temporarily by working with magic, because sometimes when you're doing something in this dream world, you suspend the belief in separation just for a second and you get a glimpse. But let's not chase peak experiences. Let's go in, resolve the belief in separation, and wake up in the eternal peak experience of love. Okay? That's the surgery. So these are for this teaching is for those who are like, peak experience of heaven all the time. Hell yeah. Heaven, yeah, that's what we're doing here. I don't need to learn all the tools and techniques to get perfect health or make the dream more comfortable. I want to be in heaven permanently. And then if I still have an illusory dream life for a little bit of time, may that heaven pour through me and share with others. May that heaven pour through me and be extended to others. Not because I need to wake everybody up so that I have a better experience of the dream, but because it's who I am. But because we are one, and I love sharing that love with you, because if you remember yourself and we are one, it just gets better. But I'm already in heaven. So I understand that sexual union and orgasm and chasing pleasure and peak experiences, and let's extend it beyond just sexual intimacy to the peak blissful experiences of anything, ecstatic dance, psychedelics, breath work. I understand the longing for that, the desire for that. But the way that we experience that permanently is not to chase and not to become addicted to the external world. It's not to try and use this body. Here's where the teaching for today lands really powerfully. It's not about using this body to get there, actually. This body is a part of the delusion. It cannot get you there. The body cannot take you to enlightenment. Only the Holy Spirit can work with the body to help you trace the belief in separation through it, to resolve it there so that you wake up in heaven in the mind. Because enlightenment happens in the mind, not through the body. We're using the body as a mirror, but you can't get it using the body in the illusory world, right?